Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Genetic Genius Podcast. I'm so excited to have today my guest, Doug Bertram, and he is a licensed acupuncturist, and we're going to be talking all about Chinese medicine and manual therapy and how it can be used to manage stress and optimize peak performance. So welcome, Doug.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
You're welcome. Me too. First of all, if you could just give us a little bit about yourself, your background, so that the audience can get to know you a little better, that would be great.
I've been standing over a table for 27 years, initially as a manual therapist, really focusing on musculoskeletal care and myofascial. That led me to studying Chinese medicine, which some people are like, "What's a jump?" But I look at Chinese medicine and the mapping of the body and the meridians as connective tissue based. So it's really a progression. And I've been practicing, for 27 years. I started a number of practices over the years, but most recently in 2013, I started Structural Elements, and we have since franchised and have locations and have brought a number of therapists into the system. Structural Elements is a modality as well as philosophy, as well as physical locations and a company. So I wear a lot of hats. Some days I'm the chief clinician. Some days I'm the janitor. Some days I'm the CEO and the marketing team. But no, it's been a fun project. But I really come back to we really are a philosophy of how we see the body is the simplest way of.
That's great. I love that. And I totally understand the wearing of multiple hats, being a CEO myself. You're always like, okay, what needs to be done? If there's not someone to do it, I need to do it.
Exact stops with you. Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Before we get like really dive deep into our topics today, I'd love for you to just kind of set some of the framework around Chinese medicine because a lot of people don't even really understand what that is. They're like, what's a meridian? So I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about that, just so you know a little bit about the philosophy. What is a meridian? How does the energetic body work?
Yeah. So I'd like to even kind of back up a step further, as most people are familiar with acupuncture. Okay. And a lot of people have heard of the term dry needling. And the confusion starts there because most states license us as acupuncturists, which is very misleading. Acupuncture and dry needling are identical to one another.
Mm.
And the idea of a dry needle comes from when you're doing studies based on the benefits of injection therapy, you need a control group. And so that control group is needling the same point, but without injecting a substance. And what they found is that there was a lot of benefit to the dry needle. And so instead of using a hypodermic needle, which has more tissue damage and more risk of infection, they started using filiform needles, solid needles that are acupuncture needles. So a lot of people think that acupuncture is something other than just placing needles in the body. It's not. It's acupuncture is dry needling. Okay. But acupuncture is not synonymous with the practice of Chinese medicine. So Chinese medicine is a system of diagnosis and treatment based on a set of ideals of balancing the organ systems of the body. And this uses a mapping of tissue called meridians, which are connective tissue planes that are associated with the organs that are in need of being balanced. I'm a Midwest boy. And so when I went out to California and I was studying acupuncture, and the explanation was that we're balancing the chi, right? And it's all about balancing the energy. I was like, okay, but what is the energy?
What
And
is that?
I paid a lot of money and I never walked away with a good explanation. And it wasn't until after I graduated school and really started studying the International Congress of Fascial Research and really looking at mechanisms of acupuncture and what's happening in terms of the placement of the needle and the response of the tissue around it, did I start adopting the term communication. So you're not necessarily unblocking chi, helping the body communicate with itself. And when, my hand knows what my lungs know and my brain knows what my feet know, and everything can communicate and signal is getting through, then we have good homeostatic mechanisms that can kick in and balance the body. It's when the body doesn't have good communication and we don't understand what's happening in the body and we can't take inventory, is when disease and inflammation and some of these metabolic deficiencies start to arise. Acupuncture is very much a part of our practice, or dry needling is very much a part of our practice, but The ideals of Chinese medicine, we don't necessarily work on a lot of digestive things, or we're not necessarily working with infertility or allergies or some of the conditions that can benefit from Chinese medicine. But we do use the ideals of that the connective tissue and the meridians must be unblocked, and you have to have good blood and blood flow and good communication throughout that tissue as a mechanism to health.
That's a great explanation. And I really like the piece that you brought in about communication, because it's true. All of our cells, everything in our body is always communicating, right? And so when
Yeah.
we have communication breakdown, which I think most people don't really understand how their body works, they're not really understanding communicating with their body. They just think everything goes on behind the scenes. I don't really need to do anything, which is actually
Yeah,
not true. We
not
do
true
have
at all.
things that work behind the scenes, but without prevention and wellness and having a true like vision of what we want our health to be, then we can't be in control of the major computer of our body.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest kind of philosophies that we subscribe to is a bidirectional communication between the connective tissue of the body and the autonomic nervous system, which regulates our stress response. And when people can start to pay attention to physiologic changes that are indicators that they are experiencing a heightened stress response, they can then and only then apply tools to change that response. If they're not aware of it, the response just takes over. And that becomes detrimental if people don't learn how to regulate that response. And so
Mhm.
that's really at the central pillar of our philosophy and how we approach the human body and how we teach people to change some of those cycles.
Yeah, that's so true. And a lot of people that are in the chronic stress state, which we're going to be talking a lot about today, don't always understand that they're even in that chronic state of
Yeah,
stress
yeah,
because they're so used to it. They're like, oh, yeah,
yeah.
my heart rate increases or my breathing increases. They just have tuned out of their body for so long. And I think
Completely.
that's, yeah,
It becomes their baseline. Their baseline is operating at a stress response that is not sustainable. And it's
exactly.
usually until people get sick or burn out or have true metabolic deficiency where they start experiencing IBS or chronic fatigue or their
Hmm.
thyroid burns out. Or it's usually pretty far into a disease state where people stop to acknowledge, oh, this isn't sustainable. That's we like to catch it much, much, much earlier because it's a
Yes.
lot easier to treat if you catch it before the organs are in bad shape.
Yeah, before you have total communication breakdown. Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Absolutely.
That's great. So you mentioned when you were talking earlier about the connective tissue, and I was wondering if you could talk about that piece from the perspective of fascia. Like, what's fascia? Is it just connective tissue? How does acupuncture or Chinese medicine, acupuncture specifically, used to help loosen up that area in our body?
Yeah. So when you talk about fascia, I like to make a distinction of two different ways of talking about it so that you know what you're actually talking about. One is talking about fascia as a tissue, okay? And there's numerous types of fascia as different types of tissue. The other way to talk about fascia is as a system, right? The
Hmm.
fascial system is a large organ. It's the largest organ of the body. It's an organ of communication, okay? And it's uninterrupted from head to toe, from superficial to deep, and it surrounds every muscle fiber. It actually comprises of most of what the nerves are made of. It is around our organs. It is everywhere, okay? And so the fascia as a system is an intelligent system of communication that signals with the autonomic nervous system. The fascia as a tissue, we have multiple different kinds of fascia. You have fascia that is very fluid and provides lubrication. You have fascia that is very dense, that is almost like sheets of tissue. If you think of your IT band on the outside of your leg, or your low back is covered in the thoracolumbar fascia, very dense tissue that doesn't change length very much. It changes stiffness, but doesn't really move in terms of length. So when somebody says, oh, if you roll on your IT band, can you lengthen your IT band? And I say not very likely, but what you can do is you can separate the IT band from the muscles that are underneath it and improve the mobility or motility of that tissue and have better lubrication and hydration. When you talk about fascia, the name of the game is viscoelasticity. Healthy fascia should be able to stretch and return back to its original shape. This allows us to absorb impact. This allows us to shear and distribute load. It allows us to communicate with cells around us and signal to the nervous system. Fascia that becomes stiff and lacking elasticity can't communicate the same with the rest of the body. And this can either become from overuse, where we lay down additional collagen to help respond to a mechanical load. It can come from chronic inflammatory properties, and it can come from being in a chronic state of stress.
And what about an injury? How does that change the fascia and the structure of the fascia?
Injuries can affect fascia in multiple ways. There's direct insult to local tissues in the case of a torn muscle, and you are going to lay down collagen fibers and thicken the fascia as part of the repair of that tissue. Same thing if you had an incision from surgery, you're going to lay down cross fibers of fascia to repair and mend that tissue. So you can have local responses, but then you can also have global responses from compensation. So if you bang up an ankle and you're in a walking boot, you might see fascial changes in your hips and in your low back, even in your head and neck, because of compensating for how you're moving with that injury. And you asked in the beginning of asking me to talk about fascia, what happens with acupuncture and how acupuncture or manual therapies affect that fascia. So literally, when you put a needle in, it's not the poke of the needle, it's the twist. And when you put the needle in, you twist the needle, you actually get a mechanical coupling of the fascia winding around the shaft of the needle. I like to illustrate it with putting a fork in a plate of spaghetti and twisting the fork. The noodles wrap around the fork. That's the same thing that happens when you twist a needle, is you have collagen fibers that wind around the shaft of the needle. You can see this on real-time ultrasound. It's actually pretty cool. When you have that displacement of tissue and that increased tonus of tissue around the needle, you are now signaling to the fibroblasts, the connective tissue cells. Fibroblasts are like every man for themselves. They just want to be left alone. They want equal cell membrane. They don't want to be tugged and pulled on. So they actually will release a chemical process that will add lubrication to the area and actually help dissolve some of the adhesions that hold that cell in the extracellular matrix. So it literally, you put a needle in, you wind the tissue up, and then you squirt some WD-40 into the area, the cell does, and it gets the tissue back to elastic state where it can communicate. And the systemic formation of adhesions is an absolute. If you have a compensation or a structural imbalance in one area, you are going to form adhesions in predictable integers throughout the entire system. So that's also part of our proprietary approach, is that we've mapped where those adhesions form systemically. So we don't necessarily just treat acupuncture points as they're organized in the books of Chinese medicine, but palpate for where those adhesions have formed. And we use the dry needling or the acupuncture to release those adhesions so that we can restore mobility.
Great. I love that. And since our cells have a memory, and within each of the cells is mitochondria, DNA, all of that aspect, how does the fascia then have the cellular memory? Does it remember the injury, or that it's supposed to do this particular remodeling? What is that piece about?
Yeah, I don't think that I can really claim to know what the fascia remembers and what the fascia doesn't remember. I think that there would be a case to be made that the fascia has all of the information, not just single memory. There are some really pretty interesting papers that have been published that suggest that the fascia is our consciousness, that the fascia is what holds our awareness and our experience of self. So I think the fascia is really complex. It's not just it remembers being kicked and now it's guarding. I think the fascia is much more complex than that. I think the fascia is basically constant. So computers are complex, right? And computers operate off of a very simple system. Computers operate off of zeros and ones, which always kind of scrambles my brain a little bit.
Like, how does that happen?
Right. But it's patterns, right? It's patterns, and it's patterns of something so basic as zeros and ones. The fascia is kind of operates on a similar system. The zeros and ones are, am I safe and am I not safe? So the signaling that's happening is a constant asking and answering of the question, am I safe? If the answer to that question is yes, the fascia then will help via the vagus nerve stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system, which downregulates to a place where the body is receptive to rest and repair. If the answer to that question is no, either because of inflammation, because of a physical threat, because of a pain, because of a malalignment of a joint, then it's going to signal I'm not safe, and it's going to trigger the sympathetic nervous system to kick in, which is going
Right.
to put us in fight or flight mode. And so I think the mechanism, more so than thinking of it as like memory of events, I think there's an
Mm.
intelligence in the fascia that's able to constantly help interpret that very simple question of safety, and which branch of the autonomic nervous system is most going to protect our survival in the moment.
Yeah, it's a super interesting concept, right? Because I always think about what part of our body is conscious, like you mentioned, and then how are all of the cells working and communicating within each system? Like you mentioned, how the fascia is its own system. So yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting thought process. And when we're thinking about the fascia and talking about the fascia, how is the fascia then used or manipulated as a, or helped heal to really from the athletic and exercise perspective? So someone is wanting to increase their performance with, like, you for instance are a runner, correct, and have a history of doing marathons and things like that. So let's take that as a great example. So let's say you're seeing a patient, or there's a listener out there who, like myself, is training for a 12K in May. And how can
Awesome.
we yeah, the Beta Breakers in San Francisco. I'm stoked. It's gonna be so fun. How can we look at the fascia from that athletic perspective, from really optimizing our peak performance? Is that from using Chinese medicine and acupuncture points or acupressure points? How can we use
Yes.
that?
Yeah, so there's again, you're always going to get multi-tiered answers from me, but so the first thing, there are multiple techniques of how you manipulate
Right.
the tonus and how you organize the fascia, and I can speak to some of those. But there's also a lot of misconception as to why you would do those things.
Mm.
And you hear a lot of people talk about like the fascia blaster and tearing fascia. And so there's this idea that fascia is something that needs to be ripped apart and torn loose. Fascia is actually like extremely important in terms of how we function mechanistically. Use runners as an example. You have runners that are very fast who have very low muscle mass. Okay. And you would think if it were true that speed was dependent on muscle mass and power, then runners would look more like bodybuilders. But that's
Schwarzenegger or
not the
something
case.
like that.
So speed is not necessarily based on just power transfer of the muscles. It's based on passive recoil of the connective tissue. So there's actual timing that goes into in the Achilles tendon and the hamstring tendon and the psoas tendon, that there is anticipatory stiffening in the gait cycle that allows for load to be placed on those tendon bodies, and there is a stretch to that tendon body and a passive recoil that happens. That's very important to efficient running mechanics. So the idea of breaking down that fascia and ripping it apart, you're going to disrupt a very healthy, very efficient mechanism of the function of the fascia.
Right.
Where fascia needs to be cared for in terms of whether it's an endurance athlete, whether it's a power athlete like a sprinter, that the fascia needs to be hydrated, right?
Mm.
So proper nutrition and hydration is a key
Hmm.
component to metabolically support the elasticity and the health of the fascia. Timely recovery and repair in terms of what I call flossing, just like you floss your teeth to get the junk out of your teeth to prevent gum disease and inflammation. Flossing the fascia is really important to help metabolic turnover and to help prevent the formation of what we call cross links, cross fiber formation from new collagen production. So instead of getting on a foam roller and blasting everything that hurts, I instruct people to get on a foam roller, locate a tender band, pin that area down, and then take the extremity through an active range of motion so that they're combing those fibers in the healthy direction of the tissue around it. So using range of motion, not just back and forth twanging over fibers. So, whether you're using a foam roller or a massage ball or some of the percussive massage tools, it's really about what you're trying to affect, right? And a lot of times what you're trying to affect is just improving the mobility and the direction of fiber formation so
Hmm.
that all of the hard work you did is getting you stronger, not forming adhesion that are going to reduce the elasticity of that tissue. And that becomes really important for anybody that's doing repetitive motion, whether it's a baseball pitcher, whether it's a tennis player, whether it's a golfer, whether it's somebody who's just sitting at a computer and,
Keyboard.
and, and doing a lot keyboard work. So it is important to look after
Hmm.
it. Within manual therapy, we do that for the patient. We find areas, we hold a tender band or where we feel that presence of an adhesion, and then we take them through a passive range of motion to floss those fibers. I might flat fist in the back of somebody's hamstring while I'm gently bending and straightening their leg to organize those fibers. But deep tissue is not, it means that you're affecting tissues deep into the body.
Mm.
Tissue does not mean that you have to use lots of pressure or that it has to be painful. Because again, if you go too hard, you're going to trigger a sympathetic response and the fascia is going
Exactly.
to stiffen. It's not going to be in a compliant state to elongate and relax and mobilize.
Yeah, totally. Before I was a naturopathic doctor, which I am now, I was a massage therapist, and I worked in a large spa, and we would get people from all over coming in. And every once in a while there would be someone who would just go deeper, deeper. I'm like, I have to explain the whole philosophy. And like, plus I'm like, I can't really touch your spleen. So you don't
Right.
want me to.
Yeah.
And I think that's really an important piece because it does stimulate your nervous system and to that fight or flight response. And that's not a
Absolutely.
place you want to be, especially when you're in the healing mode. It's not a
Yeah.
good
Exactly.
response for your body. And when we're talking
I agree.
about, yeah, when we're talking about the fascial response, the fascial response, when is it something that is sustainable? Does our is because we're always when we're talking, I'm talking specifically about a repetitive motion injury. Let's say, like you mentioned, golf. If
Mhm.
you're looking at someone who has a repetitive motion that they're using, is it sustainable to do specific treatment, or is it something that's going to be continual? Like someone's going to be coming in, you're like, okay, you're doing this activity, and until you change XYZ, you're going to need to be coming back for continual treatment or be doing continual treatment work until the fascia relaxes.
Yeah, most of our patients get out of an acute stage within 3 to 4 visits, and then they go into maintenance mode. And so I take on very few new patients now because most of my patients, I have a full book of business of people that are just in maintenance mode. So
Right.
I'll see people usually every 4 to 6 weeks for maintenance. And it takes a while of being out of alignment for you to start really forming those focal adhesions. So even if they had gotten out of alignment and they have a rotation in their pelvis, or they're doing something a little wonky, their ankle's out of alignment, or
Hmm.
something that hurts on their foot, they're starting to. Usually, if I see them within a few weeks, there hasn't been so much change to the tissue that it really sets them back.
Right.
When people continue to do things for months on end and
Mm.
they haven't, are out of balance, and they're starting to form these compensations, that you really see the tissue change starting to occur. And my patients, most of them, they've all got the information. Most of them are pretty good about doing it, is that they've learned that if they do self-care between visits, that it's just like when you go to the dentist, right? And they give you the flossing lecture and they say your cleaning was really painful today because your gums are inflamed and they're in bad shape.
You
You
haven't
know,
been
you don't want
brushing.
you flossing. You haven't been flossing. And you go, okay, fine, I'm going to do it this time. And you start flossing and brushing regularly. You go back to the dentist and it's a breeze, right?
Mm.
So most of our patients now, unless there's a new event, unless there was a slip and fall, unless they went back into the gym and started working out, maybe tweak something, usually it's just simple maintenance. But most of them are good about self-care in between, and most of them are pretty kinesthetically aware now, having been educated. But it is my belief, I've got a couple pretty crazy friends, and one of them, he's done Badwater a number of times, which is a 135-mile race through Death Valley.
Oh my
And
gosh, that sounds torturous.
recently, yeah, he recently this year placed second in a race called the Biggs Backyard Ultra, but last where he ran 312 miles consecutively.
Oh my,
And last year he took first, where he ran 357 miles consecutively over 85 hours.
Oh
And so you
God.
think, how in the world could a human body do that? And the reality is that he's got very efficient mechanics. He eats extremely clean, so he keeps inflammation very low in his body. But even more than that, this is the real secret here, because I know a lot of people that eat well. And I know a lot of people that have pretty good mechanics, but there's no way that they could run 350 miles.
Maybe in a
One of the
year.
things that, yeah, right, maybe in a year, right?
Maybe in a year.
But one of the things that he can do, like nobody I've ever met, is he can relax under stress. This is the real difference, because if you can relax under stress, you can
Mhm.
still metabolize, you can still absorb nutrients, you can still repair tissue in real time against the demand and against the burn. Most people can't do that. In a stress state, they're in a stress state while they're exerting, and then repair and relaxation happens. But this guy has developed just this unbelievable, his name is Harvey Lewis. He wouldn't mind me dropping his name. This guy is able to really get into a state of relax and calm, even while he is in a really high demand situation. And
Mhm.
that is the difference in performance.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And it sounds like your friend Harvey, I think you said his name was.
Yeah,
Sounds like he's using some of those like biohacking techniques a little bit there. And what do you think about biohacking? Is it great for speeding up recovery?
yeah, so biohack, if I define biohacking for anybody that might not be familiar with it, biohacking is basically trying to manipulate our physiology. And you can biohack by using cold, you can biohack by using heat, you can
Hmm.
biohack by using infrared light, you can biohack in a number of different ways. But you can biohack with just understanding your own body's process. You can biohack with information. And so we have a project that's called SE Lab, and Lab stands for Learn and Apply Balance. And we define balance as this, is balance is when your stress response is appropriate given the demand of a situation. So if you're in a high stress situation, right, it's appropriate to have a higher stress response. But when
Right.
you're in a low demand situation, you should have a low stress response.
Mm.
Learning what those two different things feel like, and then applying the right skills at the right time is where we achieve balance.
Right.
And when you're in balance, performance and work life and sport is the product, right? Is we can thrive and we can perform at peak if we are achieving that definition of balance.
Yeah, so true. And is there specific devices you like to measure that type of recovery or peak performance, like a Fitbit or an Aura Ring? Are there things that you personally like or recommend for that?
Yeah, those things can all be helpful. There's one metric that is pretty widely accepted in the medical community now as being a good indicator of how well we're achieving that balance, and
Hmm.
that's heart rate variability. And heart rate variability can be measured by an Apple Watch. The Aura measures it. A Halo. There's another one that I'll think of it in a minute. But there's a number of wearables that
Wearables.
measure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And ultimately, what heart rate variability is, it's very simple. It's that our heart should be a little bit faster when we inhale, and it should be a little slower when we exhale. And so
Mm.
the heart rate should vary a little bit. And when we inhale, we stimulate our sympathetic nervous system. And just think about when you get scared, right? Nobody gets startled and they go, right? Everybody gets startled. They go, you take a
Right, they're
breath
not
in when you start,
exhaling, we're
right?
relaxing.
No, you don't exhale when you get startled. You gasp, okay? And when you inhale, again, you get this sympathetic stimulation. When you exhale and you're breathing out, you get a little parasympathetic stimulation. If you are balanced, that heart rate variability should be a larger number, meaning that you're getting parasympathetic breakthrough with your exhalations.
Right.
If you're not getting a discrepancy in that heart rate speed, and your number is staying very low, meaning
Mhm.
that the inhale and exhale stay at very similar heart rate, it's showing that you're not getting parasympathetic breakthrough and you're staying more in a sympathetic drive. It's not everything, but it is an indicator. And I actually like to use it as a little bit of a biofeedback tool. So I like to do an intervention, right? I like to lay on my back and do what I call the traction exercise and do some deep belly breathing and take 3 minutes to really calm myself down and see if I can get that number to jump up. It's like
Exactly.
almost like gamification of getting myself, how relaxed can I get myself?
Yeah.
And that's a fun one. Or if you have a meeting where you're like, ooh, that was yucky, that didn't go really well. I check my stats and I'm like, oh
Right.
yeah, my heart rate
You're like, oh
variability was like
boy. Yeah.
this. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But then you kind of know, like, it's validating in that way.
Yeah, using that quantitative and qualitative data for me is fascinating. And it really helps, I think, patients too to be able to see what they're doing if it's working. That's why I like biohacking technology is that it shows like, oh yeah, this is how I slept. This is maybe I was doing, like you said, some deep breathing exercises. Look how my heart rate changed. And I actually felt like less stress throughout the day, those types of
Right,
things.
absolutely. The data is
Mhm.
definitely validating, and I think it's important, but I also think that the conversation also needs to be about developing a deeper kind of somatic relationship with your body and being able to listen to the
Right.
subtleties of your body, right? Because you also, by paying attention to, are my palms sweating? Pay attention to, is my jaw clenched? Pay attention to, can I feel my heart rate? How deep is my breath? Can I
Mm.
exhale longer than I can inhale? Things like that. And some of those indicators too are really important as real-time feedback. We're not just mentally processing what happened in our body, but we're actively experiencing our body. And when we do that, we're more able to self-correct in real time, of noticing, okay, like this is a challenging meeting, or this is a math test that I feel underprepared for. My heart rate is starting to increase,
Mm.
breathing shallow, I'm starting to hold my body stiff. Those are all observations that allow us to biohack in real time.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to relax my shoulders. I'm going to, try to do some what I call square breathing, where I'm going to breathe in for 4, hold for 2, and out for 6.
Mm.
I'm going to manipulate my physiology right now so that I can get down regulation in real time. I love this. I love this analogy, and I use it a fair amount. But I say, if you've got 2 seconds left on the game clock and you're at the free throw line to make the game-winning basket, you don't go to half court and meditate. That's is not the time, right?
No?
Like, you have to know. You
Like,
you
hey,
have to,
I
like,
need a ref, I need a timeout.
exactly. No, it would be ridiculous. You get kicked off the team, you lose your scholarship. But instead, we have to, like, take a deep breath. We have to
Mm.
relax and we have to find grounding. We have to center ourselves. And then we have the wherewithal to make the game winning shots, rebalancing in real time.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
those moments of recentering that, again, attribute to performance and work life.
I really love that you brought that up. And it's so important to be able to recognize the moments of stress. And I think so many people have had a shift. And have you seen in your practice, have you seen people really have a shift in their one, maybe like the way that they even acknowledge stress since the pandemic, like in their life, and then how they're maybe dealing with it in a new way? And what are some of these like tools that people can really start recognizing and then using in their daily life to help reduce stress or be more on the other side of the coin
Yeah.
and have it be to their advantage?
I think the pandemic, you know, tipped the scales of where stress became unhealthy
Right.
for a lot of
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
And like for me personally, like I never knew that I was signing up to proctor the first grade, right? And that's like when did that happen? I don't remember agreeing to this, you know. There's some things that definitely tipped the scales for a lot of people. And I think that the other thing is when you're just in a similar environment, when people are at home a lot, things like that, you don't have as much delineation of your time. So a
Mhm.
lot of people would say, okay, I'm really stressed out, I'm at work, but now I've got my commute home. So I can listen to some music, I can kind of change gears a
Right.
little bit. And now when I get home, I'm ready to be at home. But when their transition went from sitting at the kitchen table on a Zoom call to getting up and making dinner in the kitchen, that's not much of a transition.
No, you have
So
to have
they
the
kind of
dance in
stay in that,
between.
yeah, they kind of stay in that work mode. They stay in that go because there's not those kind of routines that we
Mm.
bake in to break up and counter the stress. This is like when we talk about balance again. I think a lot of people, this is a bit of an epiphany, a light bulb for a lot of people when we talk about this, is that balance is not about making sure that you're dividing your time equally between different aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people think balance is about I work hard, I play hard, or balance is about I work out at the gym really hard because I have a really high stress job. That's not balance. That's just stressing. That's just stress in a different shade of blue. It's also stressful. So real recuperation and real restoration is about getting the nervous system to downregulate. Going to blow off steam with going to the bar and doing happy hour or going to the gym and exercising hard or going on an extravagant vacation with your family, like those don't counter one another. It's just more. It looks different and one might be
Right.
more enjoyable to change the routine, but the way that the nervous system experiences those is
Never
go.
have the down volume.
You never have the down. So
Mm.
even if you're having fun because now you're out with your friends and you feel physically better because you just moved your body and went to a power yoga class and you got a break from work by going on this African safari, like where did your nervous system get a break in all of that? It didn't, right? So when people stay in this drive state, this go, whether you call it a type A personality or whatever, but people are just in go mode, they go until they can't, right?
Exactly.
And can't usually looks like a heart attack, or can't looks like adrenal exhaustion,
Right.
or can't
Autoimmune
looks
disease.
like, yeah, autoimmune disease. Exactly.
Mhm.
That's not balance by my
Right.
definition.
Yeah.
It's not balance. Balance is really saying, okay, I have a stressful work day. I need to make sure that I get good quality sleep, that I take time to be quiet and still,
Mm.
that I take time to stretch and to really listen to my body and to give my body nourishment. And that can also look a lot of different ways. That can be a walk in the woods. That can be sitting by a creek. That can be, I usually use examples of outdoor and nature because I think there's a lot more restoration that comes from being in a natural environment than just comes from getting on the Peloton. Sorry, Peloton, but there's nothing Peloton. But I think that nature is still better
Oh, yeah.
in most
Well, real
cases.
air.
Real air. Yeah,
Yes.
and just in perspective, right? We all get so absorbed in our own story and our own schedules versus really putting context into the vastness of the world and the magic where we plug into this big system. And it can get focused on just the things that woe us, but when we kind of really look at how we contribute to and how we communicate and how we create this kind of contribution to the system, it can get us out of ourselves much quicker than just using techniques.
Oh, I really like that, how you brought that up about just having that time in nature and really looking at the aspects of your life that are having that go, that you mentioned. And really, are you taking the time to have the reset? Are you taking the time to do something? I always talk to my patients about like Cesar Millan from The Dog Whisperer, how he would have the distraction technique. Like, what are you using
Yep.
to distract yourself from the go or the daily activity and put yourself out of the norm? Because then your brain changes its thinking pattern. Your body changes the way it responds. You allow a new aspect to come in. It's like the biohacking technique. It's
It is
basically
100%.
Cesar Millan.
No, it is.
Yeah.
And I honestly, people will oftentimes say, I don't have time for that. It's just adding another thing that I have to do. And so again, I try to really break the idea that creating balance and down regulating is a time consuming or logistics intensive event. It's not. It can literally be as simple as scooting yourself back from your computer, putting your hands on your legs and taking just 5 or 6 restorative breaths. It can be something as simple as, if you have access, obviously in certain work environments, this is a little bit hard to accomplish, but if you just lay flat on your back and
Right.
bend your knees, tuck your chin, put your arms, palms face up, and do deep abdominal breathing. We call that the traction exercise. It takes 3 minutes. And in 3 minutes time, if somebody does this daily, just once a day for 3 minutes, the metabolic change that happens of being in that parasympathetic state routinely is profound over the course of like just a few weeks. I've been doing this for 27 years. I've taught literally tens of thousands of people the traction exercise. I have never had somebody report it not being a life-changing shift if they actually do it.
That's great.
It's
I
laid
can't wait to
inside of your
try it
bed.
out.
It's
Yeah.
so simple.
Yeah.
And so the process of getting this downshift is not ultimately that complicated.
Right.
Have a full branch of the nervous system devoted to it. We
Exactly.
just need to stimulate it. We just
Hmm.
need to turn off the noise and let it do its thing. That's the beauty
Hmm.
of the human body is it's built to do this. It's built
Yeah.
to do this in real time. And it does it really well, but it just can't do it against the constant drive of a sympathetic.
Yeah. And from that stress perspective, that sounds like that really contributes to the aging of our cells when we're in that space and we're never having the reset moment, correct?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Metabolic turnover, we could talk for a whole hour just on optimizing metabolic turnover and support, but
Right.
that is an event that's dependent on nutrients being delivered to the cell and waste being carried away from the cell. It's shipping and receiving. And if that's jammed up on the highway and materials aren't getting in and out, then it ain't happening. And you're not getting
Yes.
turnover and you're not getting good metabolic conversion. So ultimately, you're going to end up with a buildup of waste product, which causes systemic and chronic inflammation. And once you're in that state, it's like traffic just got worse because now vehicles are breaking down on the highway, and it's smooth operation is no longer happening.
Your
Oh,
commuting becomes a pain.
exactly. It
Yeah,
does.
totally. Oh, Doug, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And I think, like you just said, we could probably talk a long more or a lot more about different topics. But I want to take some time to wrap up some things today. And one last question, and we're going to talk about how people can find you and your new app, which I'm so excited for you to talk about. If you had an unlimited budget right now, maybe I know the answer to this one. What would you do that would have the biggest impact on the health and welfare of the planet?
Man, I think that ultimately a very human centric thing here because I think that we have the ability to impact both positive or negative our planet probably more so than any other species. But I think that humans were in a state of love and kindness
Mm,
versus territorialness and competition, that we would see a very different compassion for our planet and for the other people that are on it. And
mm,
I don't think that you can be in an ultimate place of kindness and compassion if you are feeling threat.
mm,
And I think a lot of the threat that we feel is self-induced because of being overly stressed, whether it's financial stress, whether it's environmental stress, whether we fear that our resources are not our resources. And so when we come from a place of relaxation and calm, we are much more likely to be kind and compassionate. And I think that is the mechanism that would change and shift the world.
yeah, it's so easy. Right? It doesn't have to be this massive bazillions of dollars. We can just take a deep breath, relax, and de-stress the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it right there. You can't, if you look at holistic holographic model of the universe, you can't have a bunch of stress in people and then expect for everything around us to be in harmony. It's like
Right.
we are a part of the organism. So it's each cell in the body is critically important. You can't have turmoil in one part and expect vitality in another.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I think that's a real important piece as we're wrapping up today is to if you're listening in, tuning in out there, where's the turmoil in your life? Right? And
Yeah,
reevaluate it and see how you can change it. Maybe that's your goal for 2023 as you're moving into the new year. How can you switch up your turmoil to be more at peace? That would be great
absolutely.
for everybody. Doug, tell us about this amazing new app that you have just released.
It's SE Lab, and again, Lab stands for Learn and Apply Balance. And it's an interesting mix of things because we talk a lot about posture, we talk a lot about the alignment of the body, and we talk a lot about how to improve the health of your connective tissue on the app, right? Through foam rolling, through band exercises, through all these things that help us really gain our physical form. But then we also talk a lot about tools to downregulate our nervous system and to de stress through breathing and through the traction exercise that I was talking about, and these different tools for being self aware when we're in these stress states. And the combination is really kind of what we've been talking about this whole episode, is that it's a bidirectional communication system, right? So you can't de-stress if your connective tissue is all knotted up and your posture is terrible.
That's
And you
right.
can't improve your posture and align your body if you're super stressed. So those two things work very much hand in hand.
Mm.
SE Lab, Learn and Apply Balance, is about learning to recognize and understand how these mechanisms work, and then learning to apply the right tools at the right time. And that's how we achieve balance.
That's great. I can't wait to check out the app. And how can people find the app and check it out?
Yeah, so it's on our website is structuralelements.com. That's the main company. And we have links out to the app there. The easiest way that people have found it is just by Googling SE Lab app. And it comes up
Google.
number one in the search. But you can also search it native within the Apple Store or Google
Mhm.
Play.
Nice.
If you just type in SE Lab, it'll pop right up.
Perfect. Great. And how can people find you? What's your website and where are you on social media so people can stalk you?
Yeah, again, the main website has all the links to all of our social handles, and we do have 3 locations. So if anybody's in the Maryland or DC area, we've got physical clinics. We also have a clinic in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I grew up, and so we have a clinic out there. And then we have what we call a network of SE providers. Even if you don't have a physical location in your area, chances are that we may have a therapist that has trained in our system that is in your area. So
Nice.
you can look for that as well.
Great. Awesome. And so your Instagram is Structural Elements. And then on Facebook, you can follow Doug at structural.elements. And I'll put all of that in the show notes so everybody can find you super easy. And thanks again, Doug, for tuning in today. And I loved our discussion. I learned a lot about fascia, and I can't wait to share it with the world.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.